AIS Play ความบันเทิงระดับโลกทุกที่ทุกเวลา
ส่งต่อความมั่นใจสู้ไปด้วยกันนะครับ
Well, as you tend to associate with Jakarta at this time of year, the humidity is pretty high. But just to talk for a couple of moments about this facility, which viewers will become very familiar with over the course of the morning and through the 6 days of action here in swimming at the Aquatic Centre. It's tremendous. We're sort of part indoors, part out, aren't we, really?
It's a wonderful facility, but really strange that it's a covered outdoor pool with nice breezes coming from either end. Fantastic facility with the diving, the main 10-lane 50-metre competitive pool, and then at the other end a water polo pool, and beyond the diving facility the warm-up swim down pool. So we've really put a lot into this fantastic facility.
Yes, from one end to the other it stretches well beyond 100 metres. Yes, and it's almost bordering on unique that you do have the epicentre of competition here in Jakarta, also right at the heart of the city, with many of the central business district's tall buildings just towering over us. So as we mentioned, the first event here is the women's 1500-metre freestyle one heat. Now let's just talk through this, because essentially these swimmers are swimming against the clock here, with perhaps the fastest seeded swimmers going in a single heat at the start of the evening programme.
Yeah, it's known as a timed event, and the medals can come from any number of heats. In this case, we have 2 heats, one in the morning, and the fastest entries will be in the finals session, and that will be seeded according to the entry times as per normal, with lanes 4 and 5, the key lanes.
So these swimmers will essentially set the benchmark for those swimmers tonight who, on the basis of their recent performances and lifetime best performances, are seeded to be faster than the trio who will be lining up in this single heat here. However, should their times be superior to those in the evening, they will collect the medals. So there is absolutely everything for them to compete against here. But we're just awaiting the arrival of those swimmers. The Japanese with plenty of support, and I can imagine looking forward 2 years, of course. It's going to be Japan's big day, the Olympic Games returning to Tokyo after more than half a century.
Yeah, Japan have taken up the characteristic now of modern swimming and racing hard before they come to a key meet. They've just come off the Pan-Pacific Championships, which were held in Tokyo, but against the might of Canada and United States. And now they're coming to their main championships, the Asian. So they're racing really hard before they come here.
And as a swimmer, are you able to produce 2 peaks within such a close space of time, or do you tend to have to focus rather more on one, perhaps as a priority over the other?
Well, for them, the time's too short, really, to call it a 2-peak season. It's only been a couple of weeks since they finished the Pan Pacs, so they're carrying over their taper and their preparation to this meet, and hoping that it holds up against the mighty challengers of China.
Yes, I think it's important to make the point that Drew, as well as being a commentator with many years' experience, also has a fair old record as a swimming coach as well. So we await the arrival of the women participating in this 1500-metre freestyle, and here they are, waiting to come in there in the having gone through the call process. Now that's a unique process when we get to major championships and major games. It's, in many respects, it's a real test of swimmers, participants' mental strength, that they can go through that process. It's a very different routine to many other sort of events, isn't it?
Well, it's very interesting how they structure the call room. A lot of swimmers don't like to be next to their competitors, like to prepare on their own.
But you don't get much alternative, do you?
No.
still water, soon to be broken by this triumvirate 1500-meter swimmers, which in the traditional Olympic program, in the main aquatic events, is the ultimate endurance test.
Well, there's a big argument about 800 and 1500, and no 15. We're trying to equalize the sexes, and a lot of people would like to see just the 1500 for both men and for women, and get rid of the 800. The 800's it's a distance which falls between a true endurance event and obviously the sprint events, which now the 400 starts to look like the balance between the two, sprint and endurance. So there's a big argument going on about what to include at the Olympics and Worlds.
Do you anticipate an alteration sometime over the course of the next
it's too
couple of
much.
games?
15 and 8 for both men and women is just too much in the program. At least the women here are going from 1500, and then later in the program we'll find an 800. But sometimes it can be the other way around, and that leaves the true distance swimmer at a slight disadvantage moving up the distance.
So the three participants here.
This is a long wait, Martin, for these swimmers, even although they might be in the slower heat.
Representing Asia Swimming Federation, Ms. Kazumi Eguchi.
Yes, the three participants. Thi Lin Mai of Vietnam, Gabriella Due of Lebanon, and Xiao Lam Katil Tang of Hong Kong, China. So they've been given the all clear.
Yeah, at every competition, the first session's always going to have challenges and bumps and ripples, and that was a long introduction for the technical officials, and that's just left the swimmers out too early, really.
Yes, and for those who are not necessarily aficionados of competitive swimming, well, we do have a bit of time. We can run through one or two of the roles. We can see their officials sitting behind the blocks. What is their primary function?
That's your timekeeper, turn judge, stroke judge within the event. Busy people.
Yes, it's remarkable how the advances in technology and television have altered competitive swimming. Some of these views that we're getting really are quite stunning.
They're not ready. The officials had left the backstroke flags in the pool after the warm-up session, and they need to take it out for the freestyle.
Yes, those flags which you, again, if you're not necessarily aficionados with competitive swimming, you'll see they're hovering over the pool, and they are there for the benefit of backstrokers. So those have just been put behind the blocks there. As you say, it's a fair old mental test for those three athletes who are having to deal with all the stuff going on at the periphery at the moment.
And with the heat down at the poolside, it could be wilted. Finally.
That is Mai of Vietnam. She will come and sit behind the starting block in lane 3. is Choi Lam Katil Tang for Hong Kong, China. And she goes in lane 5. And here is the Lebanese swimmer, Gabriela Douay of Lebanon.
It has to be noted that if they're going to do that every single heat, this is going to take a long time. I think they're going to be off schedule.
So there we can see some of the significant landmarks in this event. The world record, Katie Ledecky of the United States. So the world record in this event, just outside 15 minutes. So we're underway. The first event on the opening morning in the GBK Aquatic Centre. The women's 1,500 metres, so the 50-metre pool, 30 lengths of it.
Well, what you're hoping for here, Martin, is that the entry times are stretched between 17 minutes 31 and 17:44. You'd like to think that they could swim fairly close and get a good competition for their heat swim. Because for some of the developing nations, this could be a chance at a national record, certainly a chance for a personal best time. But if you don't have competition beside you, it's a very lonely swim.
So coming through to complete the first 100 metres, and it's Tang who has a lead by about a length from Douay of Lebanon, and Mai at the moment, Vietnamese, there in third place. Let's just talk a bit about the preparation for swimmers in this, which in the mainstream Olympic events is the sort of the ultimate endurance test. I mean, what sort of work are they doing in preparation for an event like this, away from the competitive season?
I think first of all, you have to differentiate between swimmers in the smaller nations who might well be doing this as a hobby, a sport, and getting picked for the national team off, you know, minimal training, against the full-time professional athletes that you will find in the bigger countries, the more developed countries. And they'll be doing a very similar program, building up over a period. It's usually periodization. So the distance swimmers, they're just putting in lots of pace swims, lots of distance, build up the endurance, and they've been picked out because they have the kind of metabolism that can deal with the build-up of lactic acid in the muscles, and also they have the mentality, as you were talking about, to grit their teeth and stick at it. This is the real tough event of the program, and it's often underrated, especially on the men's side.
So presumably, in a day, in the middle of their toughest training period of the year, they are spending hours in the water?
No, they'll, like many of the swimmers, they'll have 2 by 2 hour sessions, and they'll have some gym work and some land work, but the nature of the session will be around pace and endurance, and obviously quite a lot of work on freestyle, which is the bedrock of the swim program.
Yeah, in terms of the specific work, how much time in the pool, how much time in the gym? Clearly, weight training plays a heavy part in their preparation.
Yeah, 2 2-hour sessions, one in the morning, one in the evening. Lots of countries have to still go early morning to not clog up the public facility, and then maybe an hour and a half in the gym later on. Important thing here is the technique of modern swimmers who are super fit in the freestyle will have a positive 6-beat leg kick at the back. That's very difficult to sustain. Many swimmers are still very arm dominant, get the rhythm in the front of the body, and the legs simply are a counterbalance. They're just kicking the body up, keeping it flat, reducing as much frontal resistance as possible.
And when you talk a 6-beat leg kick, we're talking about the number of kicks of the feet for every complete stroke cycle.
Yeah, you measure it from one arm entry to the next entry on that same arm. That's a stroke cycle. Front crawl, it's 2 alternating arms, but you have to count it from, say, the right hand entering and the number of kicks that go with that alternating action.
And how much does that differ, Drew, between perhaps a swimmer in the 200-meter freestyle to an endurance swimmer doing the metric mile?
Well, as I said earlier, the modern swimmer can now hold the 6-beat all the way through. If you look at the top swimmers like, especially in the men, Paltrinieri, etc., he has nothing when he's doing 1500. But Romanchuk, his big component, is the 6-beat leg kicker. So it's a style thing and it's a fitness thing. But when you come down the distances, you then find that the 6-beat is not only there in every swimmer, but it's much stronger in the sprint swimmer.
And in terms of the strokes, if we go through the evolution of swimming, particularly endurance swimming, what have been the great changes over 2 or 3 decades?
Well, the biggest difference, I think, for all strokes and distances has been the introduction and the use of sports science. So better measurement of stroke rate, tempo, heart rate, lactic acid in the body. A lot of, now bringing out measurements of the line of force, the application of force, to see how you can get the best tracking in the pool. There's still many people think that it's about putting the hand in the water and drawing it back, but in fact what you're doing, top swimmers can feel the water and they create a fulcrum on the hand and they actually lever the body past the hand. There's always some slippage because it's a liquid medium, but you're trying to get the best hold you can on the water. In the front crawl, there used to be a very definitive S shape of the hand. Now the stronger swimmers, and that's because of full-time training, they can hold a straight line almost going backwards. So that's the biggest change in the freestyle. But in the sport, it's been about sports science, better education of coaches. The techniques are out there. It's really about matching the technique to the athlete.
So if we were to go back, many people who are not necessarily aficionados of the sport, they'll go back to 1972, they'll go back to Mark Spitz picking up 7 golds in Munich. If you were to look at the technique of a Spitz as compared with a leading swimmer today, would even the untrained eye be able to see pretty fundamental differences in technique?
Yes, you would see, for example, the top sprinters, although you've just picked a very difficult example because of his range of distances, and he covered freestyle and butterfly. So it's a difficult one to use as the marker, but where you had in the sprint events, bent arm, S-shaped pool in the 60s and 70s, you're now seeing straight arm recovery because the swimmer is much stronger. The athlete is able to hold that straight arm position. You're seeing a much higher turnover of the stroke, and you can get that not only in the short 50s and 100s, but you can see a higher tempo in the 200 and even the 400 because they're able to sustain it.
So the swimmers have been going for almost 9 minutes. And in lane 5, Soi Lam Katil Tang of Hong Kong, China. And that is 800 meters. So into the second half of this swim.
Now what 1500 meter swimmers talk about is the pattern that they're going to use. And in their career, if they're going to swim over a number of years, they should experiment with those patterns. Some think of it as 3 400s and a final 300. Some will think about 2 800s. So you're doing the first half and the second half either at the same speed or slightly faster in the second half because you're coming home. But as you get into that second half, obviously you're tired, so it has an effect. A lot of swimmers will maybe think about the 200 distance and split the race into the 200s because that's the kind of basis for the training program. They'll maybe go 15, 20, 200, so they'll know the pace for 200. But here you can see that Tang is well out on her own and the race has really lost its competitive edge. So these swimmers are actually swimming in an individual pipeline of their own pace and how they feel this morning. It's unusual to get a 1500 at the front end of a program of swimming. This is very strange and unusual.
So swimming towards 2/3 distance, and Tang's advantage something like 35 meters over her closest pursuer. There in lane 4 is Gabriella Douay, the Lebanese swimmer. Interestingly, according to the qualifying times that they brought to these games, Douay was actually the fastest of the three. But as fatigue starts to set in now, inevitably she moves now into the final third of the race. Technically, what things is she mindful of? What changes do you make? Because presumably your rate of stroke, that increases?
No, if anything, it would decrease. It's very difficult in the 1500 to suddenly change gear and speed up. So they have to use the first part of the race to see how they feel, to see if they can transfer the training to the competition. And of course, some of these times have been done over a long period. So you can have like Douay, a 17:31, that might have been done a year ago. It's still a qualifying time for this, but it's how she is on the day, and you can see that she's nothing like the 17:31 that she's entered on.
That's Douay just going through that turn. The Vietnamese at the moment in third place. But just a reminder here that Tang from Hong Kong, China, operating essentially against the clock. This is a timed event. We do have the second heat when we can expect all the lanes to be filled. That's at the start of the evening program, and it will be by putting the times together from this first heat this morning with those in the evening that the medals will be determined.
This is now a standard Olympic facility with 10 lanes in the pool. When it's really busy at a competition, you can use all 10 for the heats. And usually it's 8 for the final. So the lanes are numbered 0 to 9. What you're looking at are the 2 golden lanes. Tang on the right there is in lane 5. Usually the faster swimmer in any heat or final is in lane 4. And then there's this special seeding process, which we can better talk about later on in this heat session and tonight. But Tang there just trying to keep not only the rhythm, but the length of stroke underwater. You can see she's going through in 13:44. She's swimming about 1 minute 10. 1 minute 9 for each 100. So she's holding pace, but it has got slower since the early part of the swim.
So the 10-lane pool, those lanes you can see numbered 0 to 9 when we get to the finals, and there are 8 participants. They will occupy lanes 1 to 8. I mean, back in the old days, there used to be a significant disadvantage being right up against the wall, but the design of pools is so much better these days, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. The water tends to flow over into a draining system, and then it's recycled.
Because back in the old days, you got some backwash from the swimmers.
Also, you can see at the top of the viewing screen that it's deck level, so the pool is deck level. In the old days, you would find maybe 18 inches or, 1 meter of tiles or wall, and that created the backlash of water back into the pool. At this speed, and with no one beside you, there's not even a chance. You get 1,500 races, Martin, where the swimmer can go to the side of the pool and get a little tow from the person in the next lane, providing they're going roughly at the same speed. You see that in the top swims. Might see that in the men's event.
Well, there's an interesting number you can see bottom left-hand corner of your screen. The world record split. That world record set by Katie Ledecky, the American, in Indianapolis. Not that long ago, earlier this year.
Yeah, that was at the United States Open Championships, and Ledecky, a fairly free swim.
So,
Bell, 100 to go, should see a pickup. And if she really can see the leg kick coming in now from Tang, and she's got a real chance of really blasting that 17:37.
So into the wall for the final time. And you can see your 2 rivals there. Almost 50 metres adrift.
Now, when Tang brings in the legs here, and you can see now the stroke rate's picking up and she's starting to motor a little bit, tells you she's got too much energy left.
That's spoken like a coach.
Sorry, yes.
So bear in mind, she's operating against the clock. This time will be taken to this evening's second heat.
But you can hear the heavy splash of water, but that's a super little swim. 17:08 off a 17:37 mark. Excellent.
Yeah, so she's taken almost half a minute off that qualifying time, and the athlete from Hong Kong, China, there she is. Wins our first heat in competition here in Jakarta. It will be...
The other 2 in the field are not even racing, so it's probably a disappointment for Due.
So Due's time coming through there in 17:37.77, so very close to the qualifying time that she brought to this event.
But Mai of Vietnam has just knocked 4 seconds off her entry time. There's the very positive start. Good little skills there, not as tight as you'll see with the top swimmers, but good streamlining on the entry, waiting to take the speed of the dive into the stroke, and then setting off on their 1500 journey. Tang, though, dominated the event from early on. She should be really pleased with that.
So there's our winner. And her time confirmed at 17:08.39. There we have it. Gabrielle Due of Lebanon in second place, 17 minutes 37.77. And Thi Linh Mai of Vietnam in third, 17:40.56.
Seri Satu. Ladies and gentlemen, now entering the pool deck.
Oh, you see a big difference in freestyle. We stay with the stroke, but we go down to 200 and we go to the men. And there's only 5 heats, so it's going to be swift.
So these are the qualification heats, once again competing against the clock. It will be the leading 8 times over these 5 heats, which will see them progress to the final. Yes, the pool will be pretty much filled in the other heats, but our first heat does just see 3 participants. In lane 3, Sarab Sambrakar from India, Adil Kaskabay of Kazakhstan is in 4, Firas Saidi of Qatar in lane 5, Qatar, who hosted the African Games 12 years ago. So we'll see the noticeable pickup in tempo.
Yeah, now what you have here is 5 heats. You're going to get a couple of heats with slightly slower times, remembering that for many swimmers, certainly in the teenage years, breaking the 2-minute barrier for 200 freestyle is still the first challenge. It's the first hurdle. It's the first kind of prominent marker. And then you go all the way down to the world record at 142, but that was with the now banned suits in 2009 at the famous Rome World Championships. This is a most interesting event because it's the very sensitive balance between speed and endurance.
So Kaskabay, the first of the turn at halfway. I think I mentioned Doha having hosted the African Games 12 years ago. Somebody's just had a polite word in my ear. Asian Games, of course.
So now we're starting to get a little bit of competitive racing next door to each other. This is good. Lane 4 with the fastest entry time, although for many of these big championships, Martin, you don't get an entry time. It's a late entry. They'll have qualified on another event, and then they've entered in the 200 freestyle without the qualifying time, and that's why there's no times beside them on the start list. So you can sometimes get a very fast swim from a swimmer who's entering on a second or a third event in the program.
But it's Kaskabay who led at that final turn by 0.2 of a second and stretching it out to almost a length now. It's a powerful finish. And the Kazakhstani takes that first heat. So there is the time, 1:53.37.
Now 1:53 matches some of the times in the later heats, but it's got to be done on the day. So that's great, because what it does is it throws the gauntlet down to some of those later swimmers, because there's only 8 lanes in that final, so got to come and get him now. He's the lead, and that's a super little marker for this 200 freestyle. You can see there the swimmer above, a lot of the feet coming out of the water, a lot of extra kicking, a lot of extra air. And if you're kicking air, you're not giving forward propulsion. So you want to have those feet just in the water, and it's the depth of kick that becomes important.
So there is Adil Kaskabay, the winner of that first heat, 1:53.37. Sangbakar of India in second, 1:54.87. Yes, to give those performances some sort of perspective, the game's record set by Park Tae-hwan of Korea in Hangzhou 8 years ago, 1:44.80. So there is the lineup for the second heat. The fastest of the participants seated there in lane 4. Nogawela, the Sri Lankan, who has been inside well inside 2 minutes, 1:56.84. But he will be targeting that very, very respectable qualifying time there of Cascabay.
But you'll notice that the other 6 swimmers in the heat are all over 2 minutes, so you could find that if he swims to form, again, it's almost like a personal time trial rather than a race.
Yeah, the point you were making about those athletes arriving with out qualifying times, very pertinent indeed when you see it against some of the performances which have been clocked by these swimmers coming into this heat here.
But this is, again, it's an important moment for some of them, even although they're entered on 2:21s and 2:28s. That could be a national record, because you don't have national records for countries like Mongolia to hand, so could be an important swim.
So the first to emerge, Nuguela, the fastest seeded swimmer here, and already has about a length advantage. Sri Lankan going away very powerfully, and you can see there, I guess, early success of the seeding with that rather recognisable arrowhead.
Indeed. Nice split, 26.9. Now what you're looking for here is you'll see a drop-off between the first half and the second half. The size of that drop-off usually tells you what kind of condition the swimmer is in, whether they've got enough endurance to hold the speed over. So you want to look at this 100 time and then look at the 200 time, do a little arithmetic and find just what kind of form he's in.
So Nuguela there with about 3 body lengths. Mohammed of Qatar in second place. He in turn has a length over Ibrahim. Just to reinforce that point, these swimmers in these qualifying heats competing against the clock. It is the fastest 8 over the 5 heats who will qualify for the final tonight.
You can see a lot of air bubbles on the arm, taking a lot of air into the stroke, so he loses a bit of feel on the water. Nice strong leg kick. He knows he's going home now on the last 50, so you'll always get a pick up on that. But it's about the first 100 against the second 100 really, and how he's distributed his fitness for this event. You can see the arm stroke getting very much shorter now as he starts to tire, struggling to get in. He'll be just on his time.
Well, you can see that performance actually almost 3 seconds slower than the winning time in the first heat. Coming through in second place there is Mohammed of Qatar, and in third Ibrahim of Maldives.
Nuguela, a 156 is very, very solid, but we're now talking about 150s and 140s at the top end of the swimming program, so he's got a lot to bring down. Losing a bit of structure in his stroke technique as he went through the second 100. As you can see, they have to wait now on the closing swimmer up there in lane 1. And of course, questions are always asked against that kind of result where you're entered on a 2:28, but you come in a 2:44 mark.
Here's the final swimmer there, Tengiz Gutspire of Mongolia. There's our heat winner.
The giant scoreboard is at the turn end of the pool, so the swimmers have to finish and then turn round to look quite a distance away, but it's very clear, and you'll be checking that 156.
So the fastest qualifier at the moment remains the winner of that first heat, Adil Kaskabay down in the 153s. But the business starting to get very serious, though, by the time we get to Heat 3. One or two really big names in the swimming world to come.
Very big indeed, with Ihara there in 4 for Japan. Olympic bronze medalist in the 4x200 team, so he's done it as a team member. Now he has to do it as an individual. Start of the seeded heats, where you get this peculiar circle seeding in the last 3 heats. So lane 4 is the lane to watch, and anything else is a bit of a surprise. Baklav Jordan in lane 5, also somebody to watch.
So Ihara in lane 4, the first to emerge from the dive, and half of this field do have times in the 140s, so expect a very significant uplift in the tempo here. And Ihara it is, with about a half-length lead as he comes towards the first turn. Alongside him is Lee Ho-jun of Korea. But it is Harara with a 73/100ths lead at that first turn.
24.4 is out quite hard. Remember that Nugawela was out in 26, but couldn't hold it. Now you'll see a different level of fitness here.
Backler of Jordan applying a little bit of pressure here there in lane 5, closing down on Ihara of Japan. So it is Ihara out in front, Backler there in second place, Lee the Korean, and over on the far side there, Abasungi of Sri Lanka.
There's an extra psychological dimension here now, because the first of the seeded heats have to judge how fast they're going to go, because the winners will be in the final this evening. So just how fast? Good challenge.
Well, it's Ihara there with the black cap. Above him there in lane 3 is Lee of Korea. Backler of Jordan coming through strongly now. Who's going to get it on the touch? Backler with a very fast finish, just gets it. A very powerful last 50 metres there from the swimmer from Jordan.
Well, the question comes up, was Ihara easing off because he just wants to be in the top 3 on this first heat? You don't want to be 4th. Now you see the skills. Ihara last to break into the stroke for the swim. And then much cleaner underwater. Ihara going long arm and a big drift into the wall for that finish, and that allowed Bakla to come in on an underwater touch for the victory. But I'm sure there's a little more to come from both swimmers.
So 2 times you can see they're in the 147s. 2 more heats to go, though.
This is the penultimate heat of the morning in the 200 for men. Japan's Matsumoto entered on 145 in lane 4, and he swam that at the recent Pan Pacific Championships against the might of the United States and Canada. So It's whether or not the tactic of Pan Pacs 2.5, 3 weeks before the Asians, whether they have been able to carry over their fitness and their racing speed to these championships.
So the golden lanes in the middle, ones to keep an eye out for. Matsumoto breaking away quickly, but perhaps the first at the moment, Ali Amani, there of Yemen. So the first turn, 24.79. It is the Japanese Matsumoto out in front. Ali Amani in second place there with the white cap in lane 6.
You can see Matsumoto there with breathing every 2, taking in oxygen every second stroke. Makes it look a little bit one-sided, a little bit of a loping stroke, but obviously very efficient underwater. And when he breathes to the right, he'll see any challenge coming from that top side of the pool. And on the turn, he'll be able to clock lane 5. See if there's any challenge from Sim of Malaysia. Now coming. Third quarter of the swim, the third 50 is always a tough one. That's where to go for it or just hold your lead and make the others work hard to come and get you.
So Sim...
It looks like Matsumoto's doing, sorry.
Yes, Matsumoto, Sim starting to come back at him though with a half-second deficit at that final turn. But Matsumoto clearly swimming well within himself here. So Matsumoto takes it, Sim comes through in second place. Jang of Korea, there in third. So 1:47.94. And just a little bit slower actually than the winner of the previous heat, Bakla having swum 1:47.60.
But you can imagine the depth that Japan now has for their 4x200 freestyle, really, when they're both going 1:47. Two other swimmers to join them. It will be a strong team. Matsumoto, of course, 1:47.9. He went 1:45.9 in the Pan Pacifics for third place. The event was won in 1:45.56. It was a very, very tight finish in the men's 200 freestyle in Tokyo. So he's got a little bit to come. It's just whether he has the speed or not. Good swim from Sim of Malaysia too, as we look at the final heat.
Well, you can see there in lane 4, Sun Yang of China, who promises to be one of the stars of swimming competition, perhaps one of the marquee names of these entire Asian Games. He's a man with quite a history, 3 Olympic titles.
Indeed. Along with a huge barrel load of controversy. Now, swimming the second fastest time of the year in 1:45.15. Sun Yang entered on a 1:44.39. That's from way back. And everybody will be interested to see what shape he's in. Certainly, the early look is that looking trim.
Take your marks.
Yes, I certainly know his coach has been talking him up. So we do have 5 times already over the previous 4 heats, inside 150. That shouldn't necessarily concern the athlete from People's Republic of China. There he is in lane 4. Well, moving very strongly, Huang of Vietnam. And it is indeed Huang who leads at the first turn. Sung just 12/100ths of a second behind him. Fine turn, though, by the 3-time Olympic champion. Now just beginning to ease clear in this second 50.
Well, of course, some of his Olympic and world swims were in the 1500, and he's come down to 4 and 2 only lately. Good skills, nice dolphin kick, bringing the body up flat. Of course, he has that very long wingspan. Looking good, in control of his heat. You can see that little training effect there just off the center of the lane, because normally in training you're going in a circle in the lane. Sometimes that's hard to get rid of, even in competition.
So it's the 2 Chinese swimmers. Sun out in front, Ji in second place, about a body length behind at the moment. Keep your eyes on the clock. Anything inside 148 should guarantee a place in the final. So it's Sun who takes it. Ji comes through in second place. Huang, the Vietnamese, coming through there.
So Sun Yang quickly recovered, no heavy breathing, good swim, a nice posting of 147.5. But all he wanted to do there was to win the heat. Guarantees in the middle of the pool, someplace 4, 5 or 6 in the finals this evening. And that's a very comfortable 147. One of the interesting features of competitive swimming at this level is that a little bit of time means a lot of distance between the swimmers. And if you've got a body as tall as Sun Yang, that can mean even further between him and the next swimmer. Little problem with the finish of Ji, not registering properly on the pad. So they'll go to the backup timing. And hopefully it will get listed as Sun Yang gets caught in the open mix zone there.
There it is, it's all been corrected. Ji coming through 148.85.
So it needed a sub 150 to make sure of the final. And there's the summary. There's your qualifiers for tonight's final. Sun will be in lane 4. Bakla, Ihara either side. Matsumoto in the mix as well. Then it drifts out to the 48s, 49s. Still good times to get sub 150 in the 200, but it looks at the moment as if it's a strong battle from Sun Yang. The next event up on the program, we go to backstroke. It's the women's 200. There are only 3 heats. And there's the listing for the first heat with Liu Yaxin of China in on a 2.9. So it looks as if they've seeded all 3. Missy Franklin still with the world record from the London Olympics, that 2:04.06. And then once she got into the American University program, she virtually disappeared through illness and all the media hoo-ha that followed her after the London Olympics. She's taken a long time to come back. It's nice to see her swimming again. Just not quite at that London level yet.
Take your mark.
So 4 lengths on the pool for this women's 200-metre backstroke. As Drew was saying, 3 heats, all being seeded. Liu there in lane 4. And already swiftly away with a half-length advantage.
Well, you're asking about changes. Some of the changes have been of a technological aspect. Technology put a new starting mechanism for the backstrokers. There's a little ledge drapes from the starting block, allows the swimmer in backstroke to do a much higher arc and get a much faster start. Liu there, very uneven in the stroke, you can see that. Just a little limp in the stroke, very little legs. Trying to save them for the last half. Going through in 63.
Well, the host with the swimmer in this heat, Yota Putra there in second place, quite significantly behind Yu of China.
A lot of movement in the body there, Martin. You can see the head shakes, the shoulders are rolling as they should do, but not quite as much. Very little splash at the feet. So we should see a little bit stronger leg kick on this last 50.
So Liu through the turn, the real race is for second place with Yota Putra of Indonesia, and you can certainly sense that the local crowd getting behind their swimmer here.
Nice underwater view of the little hiccup in the arms. The legs stop kicking, so she's not applying force all the time from the leg end. So she'll be just about on her time. 103.209.
Well, that's pretty much the time she brought in, and just coming through in second place is Yu of Philippines, and in third, Puchkarova of Uzbekistan.
So Liu very dominant in that heat. Others drifting out to the 2:42 entry time. It almost seems a shame that that's the way they have to swim, but that's the way the seeding goes sometimes. Early on, nice control, nice steady head. And then in the latter half of the race, the head started to move about. Extra roll on the body. You can see there the head turning to the right-hand side. It shouldn't move at all. It should be absolutely steady. The backstroke flags, of course, set at 5 meters. The swimmer going under there knows how many strokes it takes to get to the pad, and really has to make sure that she finishes on a long, hard reach for the final stroke. 209's then, leading the way in the 200 back.
Yes, if we go back over the design of swimming pools, and particularly the roofs, I know in the past there have been 1 or 2 international swimming pools that have had problems with the design of roofs because of almost the navigation of backstroke swimmers. I remember in the UK, in the old Leeds International Pool had a few problems of that kind, didn't it?
Yeah, a lot of swimmers swam into the anti-turb lane ropes in Leeds, that's for sure. So in the middle there's a black line, that's a you can see the black strap hanging over the blocks, and that's now an accepted
Take your mark.
new starting procedure for backstrokers. Underwater, it's dolphin leg kick for the first few kicks. to get them to the surface. They have 15 meters before the head must rise, and then they're into the race.
And it is Sakai of Japan, the leading seeded athlete here. 2:08.28 she swum, leading by half a length. Sakai from Wong of Hong Kong, China, and also their Im of Korea. So it's the Japanese swimmer first to the turn. Has a lead of almost a body length, but it is now a body length.
Sakai, beautiful technician. You can see now how steady the head is. Light leg kick, just keeping the body up. Keeping it as horizontal as possible to reduce any kind of resistance. Onto the front now allowed, so that's made it a faster turn over the years. Back into the race.
It's quite a contrast, isn't it, the technique here of Sakai with that of Liu in the first heat. So much more movement from the Chinese swimmer.
Again, 3 heats, 8 lanes in the final. All Sakai has to do is almost like a training swim going through. It's a nice pick-up from Im of the Korean Republic.
Yes, turning just a little more than a second behind the Japanese swimmer, but she's swimming a very fast second half. And
that's the point I'm making. It's a second. It doesn't sound a lot, but you have to measure it from the hand of the trailing swimmer to the hand of the lead swimmer. That's a big distance to make up. But she's giving it an attack. Good final 15 meters here in heat number 2.
So Im could well get this on the touch, Im and Sakai. And it is Im. A very powerful second 100 there from the Korean swimmer. And she takes that second heat.
You often find that the trailing swimmer has got the urge and the momentum to catch the lead swimmer, and they usually have that momentum at the very end. And often if there's a touch out, then it goes to the trailing swimmer. Just a feature over the years.
And of course, timing your touch is such an important element of swimming, isn't it?
Critical in backstroke. So from the dive start, allowed 50 meters to the little red mark there. Before that, the head must break the surface of the water. Sakai led all the way. And then here's that strong finish from Im, both on the same stroke, but the momentum with the incoming swimmer. And that's why she got the touch at 2:12. But although Liu had a poorer technique for my reckoning, she had a faster time. But maybe she's put it all into the heat swim. That's what you never know.
Yes, so in the end, just 6/100ths of a second separating the leading 2 swimmers in that second heat. So Peng Shuwei of China going here in lane 4, and she is the fastest seeded swimmer in the event. 2:07.27 is the time she brings. That is Nurul Fitriati of Indonesia. They're in lane 3. That is the swimmer in lane 5. That's Akasi of Japan. So China lining up alongside their great rivals of Japan in this third of the heats.
Peng, a new kid on the block, only 15 years of age this year, so she's proving herself. 2:07 is a very strong time. Top times in the world this year around about 2:06. The fastest Kylie Master Canadian in the Pan Pacs went 2:05.9. So a 2:07 from a 15-year-old, that augurs well for the future.
Take your mark.
So Peng and Akasa in the golden lanes there, 4 and 5. And it is Peng. She's the first to emerge. She is in the right-hand golden lane as you look from that overhead camera. She leads by half a body length.
And over the many years, Martin, what you sometimes see is that a 14, a 13 or a 15-year-old will come and the power to body weight ratio is different from a senior swimmer, and you can see there's a much higher stroke rate, better tempo. Now, if they're very good as they grow and as they get older, they will stay in the sport, but often they come, they have a super swim at 14 years of age and then they disappear.
So Peng it is leading by almost a body length at the second turn at the midpoint.
103 is the same time as our teammate Liu in the first heat. Now it's about the second half swim. Liu went 106 in the second half, dropping 3 seconds. But that shows good overall fitness, only losing 3 seconds between the first and second half. The first half's always going to be a bit faster because of the start, but it's a measure of that fitness. Akase coming back on the last 50. Good long underwater from the Japanese.
Well, she almost saw out the entire 15 metres there, did Akase. Although Peng digging in here. Now, what sort of challenge does Akase have to deliver? As they move into the final 10 metres, it's going to be Peng, the young Chinese, who's going to take this third and final heat. Akase comes through in second. So 2:11.39, the winning time.
Only 3 heats, Martin. The swimmers are intelligent enough and hopefully coached well enough that all they have to do is get first or second place. You can see there, she went out in 63, came back in a 68, so she's dropping 5 seconds. You wouldn't have that in a top-class backstroker. So she's saving herself for the final. Both swimmers just want to be first and second in the heat and guarantee a good place in tonight's final. There's no desperation in the swim. It's very steady, it's good technique, beautiful roll of the body. Little overextension on the arm. You can see the elbows almost bent back double. And then usually for small swimmers like that, it's 4 strokes from the flags into the pad. But that's the job done. Getting into the final. And that's a luxury. Normally at our championship, should have to go heats, then semis, then finals. So it's a good job they've got quite a long rest period during the day.
Yes, the fate of 21 medals will be determined in tonight's first evening session, the first final session. This will be one of those disciplines. There you see the result from that third and final heat. In a couple of moments' time, we will get the 8 qualifiers for the final.
Good race at the front, 2:11, 2:12, and then it's out to 18s.
So here you go, Liu of China and Peng of China, the fastest 2 qualifiers. Do you read much into that, Liu having swum almost 2 seconds faster than the rest of the field?
Well, I don't know if she's got much faster 2:09s. She's entered on a 2:09, but the way she was swimming, not sure. She'll have much left for that final.
So the tempo ratcheted up just that little bit more now with the first of 4 heats of the men's 100-metre backstroke.
Take your marks.
Ali of Maldives in lane 4. The seeded swimmer here, he's been inside 70 seconds. So from the top, Mani of India, Alabaidan of Qatar, Ali of Maldives, Hussain of Maldives, and Nataraj of India.
See again, the two outside swimmers, no entry time. So they're coming off an entry from another event. And they're taking apart the swimmers in the centre of the pool. Real shame. They're having a great swim, but they can't see each other, so it's very much a time trial, but on the outside lanes.
Yes, it's Nataraj of India on the bottom of your screen, going in lane 6. On the top there, that is Mani, the other Indian swimmer. But it's Nataraj who comes through, 55.86.
Again, if you check the later times, you'll see that 55 is a very competitive time amongst the other heats. With only 4 heats, we start to get to the business end of the event right away with Kaneko of Japan coming in a 54 point. There you can see how low in the water some of the early swimmers are.
Yes, we've got a 52, a 53, a couple of 54s a little bit later, so that's a relatively competitive time. Remember, it's the leading 8 times who will progress to the final in this evening's session. 55.86.
Well, you get a lovely opportunity to see Olympic medalist and Olympic finalist in this event. So you'll see real technicians. Seems happy with his swim, 55.
Also sounds as if he was also making his lunchtime arrangements. So into the call room. And this is that unique environment, and it happens across all sports, not just swimming, track and field. Fierce rivals having to sit on adjacent chairs.
Normally you would have a horizontal room with 3 or 4 rows of chairs, and the swimmers can spread out and either be on their own or be with somebody or listen to their music. Lots of different ways of preparing, but here it's very military, very organized, and you've got no chance other than to look on the back of the head of the swimmer in front as we see a line up for heat number 1.
Yes, there is confirmation of that winning time from Zahari Nataraj, 55.86. That is setting the benchmark for the remainder of the heats. Lane 7 is vacant here. It was supposed to be occupied by Igor Boratov of Uzbekistan. So the golden lane's in the middle, occupied by Masaki Kaneko of Japan, a 54.10 man.
You can see the swimmer just reaching up with the toes on the ledge. It doesn't hurt them, but it just saves them from slipping down the electronic pad.
So those powerful dolphin kicks and emerging from the water there in lane 4 is Masaki Kaneko of Japan, the 54.10 man. Already leading by half a length going into the turn. Just above him, Paul Nguyen from Vietnam. But it is Kaneko out in front, Nguyen in second place.
On the shorter 100, Kaneko going for the long 50 meters, getting a real pressure from Nguyen of Vietnam. He'll see that out the corner of his eye, he'll feel the splash, but should be no danger as Kaneko goes to the final 5. He's 4 strokes, very easy into the pad. Went out hard, eased up in the second half.
And you can see there a full second faster than the winner of that first heat.
first of the seeded heats has to decide where to pitch the effort. So it's a very strong pace swim on the first 50. Good control at the finish. Nice touch. Being able to reach back and maximum arm stretch to register the finish. Good professional job from heat number 1. He wins the first heat. He goes 54.8 and just makes absolutely sure that he's going to get a final this evening.
So we've got a 53-man in this third heat going there in lane 4. The Japanese, Ryosuke Irie, 53.18 is the time that he brings to this heat.
This is an object lesson for swimmers from lane 4. Ryosuke Irie is one of the best technicians ever in the backstroke. He's a slim athlete, not too powerful, but great technique. And that technique should have taken him to Olympic medal. He's better on the 200, but even with a 53 entry for the Asian, he showed he was in good form at the Pan Pacifics 3 weeks ago, where he swam a 52.7 to get a silver medal in that competition. Just checking the height and the break on the pad. The pad has to be level with the surface of the water.
Thank you all.
So 54.81 set by Masaki Kaneko in that second heat. That sets the standard by Ryosuke Irie in this heat, and there he is. The first to emerge, he's got a half-length lead over Lee Yoo-ho of Korea. Into that turn.
Beautiful skills. They have to practice that to get it out at the right distance and then break into the stroke.
And he owned up half a length, just purely and simply on that turn. You can see how Lee working hard to get back in touch, but Irie very, very relaxed indeed.
One of the most beautiful swimmers on backstroke in the modern era. Irie, class job here at the Asians. 53.85, very comfortable swim.
And clearly not taking a huge amount out of him. They had a 1 second improvement on the winning time in that second heat.
See how clean he is, how beautiful the head is still. The arm action right in line with the shoulder as it rolls. This is your weakest mechanical position in swimming, on your back in the supine. So you have to have good technique and then build on the strength. Excellent finish. Just a little bit of a drift to the wall, but the super slow-mo exaggerates that somewhat.
When you say just a little bit of a drift to the wall, you're saying just a bit short on the stroke, essentially.
Well, he's finished and then he has to drift to the wall. And there you're losing even hundredths of a second, and that can mean the difference between a gold and a silver.
So 53.85, the winning time in that third heat. And the Chinese here in the fourth of these 4 heats. Zhu in lane 4, Lee in 5.
Often wonder what the swimmers feel when they come all the way to a major championships and the seeding puts them next door to their teammate. 2 swimmers allowed from each nation at the Asians, and then it becomes personal pride and a little national championship swim in lanes 4 and 5 here.
So the 8th fastest time at the moment, Mulan Chuang of Chinese Taipei, 56.56, that over the 3 heats. That's the targets, not necessarily for the leading 2 Chinese, who will have their sights fixed rather higher than that. This will certainly give us a good indication when we're looking towards the medals later on in the day. And it's lane 4, it's Yu who turns ahead by half a length.
Zhu Jiayu, the Olympic silver medalist from Rio, showing just the kind of technique required. Beautiful stroking. That's very easy swimming in the 100. You can see the tempo in lane 5 from Lee, trying hard to get up beside him. The Chinese going to go 1 and 2 in the final heat. 53, 54 low. That's a good job.
Well, it's the fastest time we've seen in the morning, eclipsing Iria of Japan by exactly a quarter of a second.
Again, this beautiful head position. Slightly high out the water, it just shows that the first part of the arm action's a little bit downward to get it into position for the power effort, and that raises his shoulders up. Good strong kicking to keep him high, but it means there's a little bit more frontal resistance on the shoulders and the neck. But 53.6, good pitching to make it through to the night's final. That's going to be close. That's going to be tight in the men's backstroke, Martin.
Between 2 very fine technicians. Japan against China. Dare I say that is going to be something of a feature of the 6 days here at the Aquatic Centre. And look at that. China, Japan, China, Japan.
But Nataraj, 55 point, got him an outside lane in the final from the unfavoured heat number 1.
So next we have 4 heats of the women's 100 metres breaststroke. World record you've seen there, held by the American Lily King. Set a little more than a year ago in the Hungarian capital, Budapest. The game's record, 66.67. Xi Jingling of China. That was 4 years ago.
This is a nonsense. The crowd should be quiet at the start. You've had cheering from a team, and these swimmers are having to hold.
Take your mark.
That's a referee's responsibility to stop that. Really poor.
Beg your pardon, Drew, that cheering, I've no doubt, welcome or otherwise, would have been for Permata Dhani of Indonesia. She's the swimmer in lane 5. But at the moment, out in front is Chenan Saber of Kazakhstan. Going to the turn, but the lead in excess of a body length.
The women's breaststroke. Top times this year, 105s, 106s. the very fastest time. Efimova of Russia won a 4.98 in the Russian Championships. You can see a lot of effort here, a lot of breaststroke, stroke cycles, but not getting a lot of distance on the stroke.
All three of these swimmers not bringing a qualifying time to these games, and Chelentseva very strong at the opening 50, but rather fading on the way home, and it's the Matahani of Indonesia finishing strongest. Very close on the touch in the end, but Chelentseva of Kazakhstan just hanging on.
What we've got here is an unknowledgeable Indonesian spectator crowd. They were cheering for their representative here in the breaststroke, but that has to happen after the start. There you can see the effort of Chelentseva slipping the water, the legs starting to lose the power, not getting the distance per stroke, and allowing the Indonesian to catch her almost at the end, just hanging on.
So 17/100ths of a second separating the leading two there. Yu Zhangzhou of China there in lane 4. Comes here with a qualifying time of 1:07.22.
In the Asian continent, obviously you've got a lot of difference between the big guns of Japan and China and Korean Republic and a lot of the smaller nations. To get under 1:10 for the 100 breaststroke for women is the first marker. Some of these swimmers are coming with entry times outside that.
Take your mark.
Well, you can see there the body language of one of the most inexperienced swimmers here. That's Temujin of Mongolia in lane 7, right at the bottom of the screen when we see a slightly wider angle. But it is Yu of China with that white cap. She's fastest away. Alongside her is Bak Siyun of Korea. So Yu of China to the tip.
Temujin, only 14 years of age, from Mongolia. So this is age group swimming against some of the senior swimmers. Only 4 heats. This is the first of the seeded heats. Yu Jingyao taking it out as expected. You can see nice glide, nice positive swim, little delay on the arm stroke. The legs not completing the leg cycle, but getting enough power, just easing back a little bit too much at the end, but it's still a single figure swim, 1:08.5.
So Bak Siyun of Korea coming back in the second 50 there to take second place, and there in third was Ip Rainbow of Hong Kong, China. So 1:08.52, confirmed time for the winner of that heat.
Early stroke from Yu looked very good. A lot of undulation in the back, but just not quite getting the distance off the leg kick in the final 15. You can see the incoming swimmer cutting that lead down with every stroke. But she wins the heat. That's the important thing.
So the leading two inside 70 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome swimmer for lead 3.
So Satomi Suzuki of Japan bringing a sub 67-second time to this third heat. just a reminder, if you are joining us, it's the 8 fastest times from these 4 heats that will take those athletes through to tonight's final. It's the opening session of action in the Aquatic Centre, right at the heart of competition in these Asian Games. The main arena right next to the Aquatic Centre. It really is a stunning complex.
Take your marks.
Suzuki, now 27, one of the old stagers of the Japanese team. Fantastic age grouper, set Japanese records early on in her career. Still looking powerful, but, well, it's age versus youth in many cases, but sometimes the experience can tell as she gets out quite strong in the first 50 through under 30s. A good split time.
Yes, it's Lin of Chinese Taipei who's in second place, and also coming through quite strongly is Yong from Hong Kong, China. But it is Suzuki of Japan just kicking on down this second length.
Suzuki, nice rhythm to the stroke, managing to hold on. You can see the length not changing as she gets into the last meters and holds on for that 106. That's a very positive swim in the heats from Suzuki.
Young finishing very powerfully as well. She's delighted with that performance, is the athlete from Hong Kong, China. So she could well have swum her way into the final. Young's time, 107.86 there in second place. So those the fastest 2 times so far in the heats. Suzuki, the only swimmer inside 67 seconds at the moment.
When it's 4 heats like this, the time is almost unimportant. Obviously, they're practicing because one of the important things now is to race hard every time you swim. So what I think she's doing is a very excellent rehearsal for tonight's final. But it's important to get the position in the heat when there's only 8 lanes available.
I was going to say, how mindful are they of getting one of those golden lanes in the middle? Yeah, Suzuki, 106.92. That fastest heat so far, perhaps predictably.
I mean, 5th fastest in the world this year was 106.19, so it's a very strong swim in terms of world rankings. I think it's going to be very competitive in the final after these adjustments they're making in the heats to swim 106 and perhaps maybe seeing a 105 point from Aoki.
Yes, the Japanese hold a very strong hand in this discipline. Riona Aoki comes here with a 65.90 to her name. Of Malaysia here in lane 3.
Take your marks.
So Aoki, fastest swimmer in the field, here in lane 4. And she's away smartly. Alongside her, Shi Jinglin of China.
Now, don't get me wrong, this is top-class breaststroke. Aoki, 3rd fastest in the world this year off the Japanese Championships. She swam a 106 in Tokyo in the Pan Pacifics to get a 3rd place. So this is your top swimmer. Japanese records down at 105.88. She was very close to that, obviously, earlier in the year at the Japan Championships. Beautiful timing. recovery just on the surface. It has to be in the water. So there's a little bit of a judgment there to get that prayer position as she goes through. But nice control over her heat swim against the challenge of Shi of China.
So Aoki Shifi finishing very strongly there with Malaysia on the second 50. So the fastest 2 times, they're inside 68, so they are the fastest that we've seen so far this morning. There she is, Rione Aoki.
Aoki there, the high lift with the in sweep of the arms at the end of the breaststroke pull. The prayer position going forward, very deliberate. That's a personal interpretation of that recovery. The legs not quite closing at the back, but getting a lovely action, especially on the lower limb, driving the body forward. 107.2 confirmed then in that swim.
Yes, just a little bit slower than Satomi Suzuki's time in winning that third heat. So certainly the Japanese in a very powerful position there, looking here at the summary. So Suzuki, the fastest qualifier, inside 107.
I think Aoki's got a lot to bring to the final off that 107.
So 3 heats of the men's 200 metres butterfly. All 3 of these heats have been seeded, with going here in lane 4, Li Zhuzhou of China, a 1:55.66 swimmer. And it's a real event for the strongmen.
Yeah, it's a tough event. It's obviously been one of the more exciting events with Chandler Clough and Michael Phelps, and of course Joe Schooling, who had to withdraw, Olympic champion on 100 butterfly, the Singaporean, coming out of the Asian Games.
Take your marks.
The butterfly stroke, often very difficult for the average human being, but when performed well, it's a beautiful action. The double arm pull giving a lot of power, but you have to brake to get both arms back to the front, so it's not the fastest swim. Still the freestyle, which has constant application of speed and power and force.
But it's Lee out in front. Just above him there, you can see Chang of the Korea Republic. So it's Lee at halfway. Chang in second place. Park, also of Korea, in third.
At the top end of fitness, you would expect to see something like 3 or 4 seconds drop off between the time for the first 100 and the time for the second. So we'll just see how much she's putting into this. Still holding the rhythm. The third quarter of any swim appears to be a significant section, psychologically, physiologically, technically. Something that you can see and understand over the many swims. But this is a very positive heat swim to get into that center of the pool in the final tonight.
So Lee with a 2-length advantage. It's Park coming through for second place, and up there in third is Chang. 2:21, the winning time for the Chinese swimmer. As you talk about that drop-off between the first and the second lengths, how much of that is just attributed to the fact that the first length comes from the start from the blocks?
Well, it's a factor you have to deal with, but if you get something like he's just done, 7 seconds between the first 100 and the second 100, then either he's eased off or he's not fit enough to hold the same speed. 55 on the way out was, you know, pretty quick, but you'd expect him to close the second half much better. Strong, squat, powerful. You can see there a beautiful interpretation of the stroke. Again, also important to look at the pads for the finish and get a positive touch. Only 3 heats. One of the reasons for the heats to finals, of course, is you don't have a huge number of swimmers. But even in the top events, you can often just have 4 or 5 heats. And you would have semi-finals of this in the evening and the finals the day after. So it's, yeah, a little bit of a luxury for the swimmers to go heats in the morning, then do your swim down and your recovery and get something to eat and back to rest and then come out for the finals held at 6 o'clock local time.
There is Seto of Japan going here in lane 4. 1:55 swimmer.
Seto is an Olympic medalist on the 400 individual medley. So butterfly is a very important part of his medley swim. Sometimes you find that they will, because they're tough men in the 400 IM, they also like to have a go at the 200 butterfly early in the program. Not bad to have a warm-up swim on 200 butterfly, Matt.
Yes, it's pretty good when you can call a 200 butterfly a warm-up as well. And it is Seto of Japan just out in front. Alongside him is the Chinese, Wang Zhou. Wang Zhou brings a qualifying time of just outside 1:57. So those are the leading swimmers here in this heat. You can see going in the gold lanes. But it's Seto at the turn at the midpoint. Little to choose though between Seto and Wang.
Now you've got 2 swimmers swimming almost stroke for stroke. They went through in 55, the same as the first heat with Lee, but because they've got this competition, you might find the second half is a little bit faster.
But it's certainly Seto appears to be working the harder to this final turn.
You've got a great chance to see that very strong arms from Wang with very little leg kick. Seto, you can see the spurt at the back where he's working his legs to keep that body flat. Just a difference. Wang not quite so hard on the leg action. And that's why I think Seto has the slight advantage.
Yes, an impressive second 100 from the Japanese, 1:57.23. There is the winner of the second of the 3 heats. And you can just see coming there in lane 7, that's Woman Ushral of Mongolia.
You see the the difference in the top athletes and the Mongolian there. The stroke completely disintegrating at the end of 200 butterfly. The butterflyers will talk about a grand piano on the back or an elephant on your shoulders at the end of that swim. I'm sure he feels that, but great effort nevertheless.
How would you summarise the great attributes of the best butterfly swimmers? What separates them from the rest?
It's all the same. It's, you look at technique, commitment to training, looking after themselves, and even on the 200 butterfly, getting all the small things right, even in this little rehearsal swim. Seto 155, probably a 155 is his best time. But against the top butterflyers, you know, you're talking about 152 and 153 from Horamuro. His compatriot can go 153, and Milak of Hungary, a 152.7 man. So there's a long way to come from a 155. As I said earlier, and it may be I'm just repeating myself unnecessarily, but a little bit of time in swimming means a lot in terms of distance between the athletes. And you're having to look at the hand, the distance between the lead hand and the next hand in terms of the finish. You can measure that in hundreds, but it isn't that in the water. Deceptive.
So there is now Horamura. Horamura is still a teenager.
10 kilograms.
So the 19-year-old, they're in lane 4.
Second fastest time in the world with his entry time of 153.79. This is the future. This is your Tokyo final prospect, 2020.
Look how powerful he is in the water. By his own standards, I think he went away a little bit in with plenty in hand, and you can see him coming through strongly up at the top of the screen there. You can see Prakash of India, who had the lead there, but now the Japanese getting into his stroke, and it's a, well, quite a contrast. Look how high he is out of the water there.
Prakash, very good first 50, but he's lifting himself very high out the water, and that takes a lot of strength, a lot of energy. Whether he can hold that for the whole of the 200 is another question. You can see he's already starting to drift back.
But noticeably, he just seems to be out of that water just that split second longer than the rest. And this is where the real quality comes through, just when, as you say, that grand piano just, you start to feel it on the back of your shoulders in this event.
Horamuro being pressed by Kwa. Kwa, of course, will have had shared experience and knowledge from Joe's schooling. Prakash coming back though, look at that blue hand he won. He really wants a place in the final.
Well, Horamura won't be able to see him all the way over there. It was a fast burst 50. And now he's coming through incredibly powerfully at the top there. It's Prakash and Horamura that's all going to be on the touch here. I think Horamura might just get there, he does. Prakash in second place, but that was a tremendous swim there in lane 2 from the Indian.
What's really surprising me, I've never seen it before, but that's a final heat and no entry time from Prakash. That is just so unusual. But that 158.1 is certainly a solid swim. The swimmer has to look at the pad and early on has to make the adjustment of stroke, so he's going to finish on a reach. Horamuro, head up, checks the final 5 meters, head down, no breathing, into the wall. Horamuro. Struggled a little bit on the third 50. And under pressure from Prakash in the last 5. Good racing from the Indian and Chinese Taipei Wang. Still on the 158s. And what does it mean for the final? There's your qualifiers. Seto and Horamuro leading, but it's tight for the first 6 places.
To read much into that discrepancy? Nothing at all. So the Japanese swimmers, the fastest 2 in that event, and here we can see the lineup for the first of the relays. It's the women's 4x100 meter freestyle, and this is the first of 2 heats. 4 teams represented: Thailand, Japan, Singapore, and Macau, China.
First of the relays, the women's 4x1. Stronger nations will be able to have some substitutes in here, something maybe for a place in the final team. Japan in 4. Look as though they have more to come.
On right off for the Japanese is Yamamoto.
Finishing off the session with the relay. They had to wait a long time to get a sprint event. But the swimmers love the team event. So unusual, since the training is so individualized and sometimes can be lonely. It's nice to get into a team, swim for each other.
Just talk us through the role of the officials here, because there is so much discipline demanded in the changeovers, as there is, of course, the starts in swimming. So Japan, and the first changeover, Yamamoto handing over to Shirai in second place there, Singapore.
It's a very lazy changeover from 1 to 2. Almost a very easy dive from the stand-up position. Top teams, you'll see the swimmer wind the arms all the way around in a circle in time to get the dive started as the incoming swimmer touches the pad. So the touch on the pad and the feet leaving the block have to be at the same time.
Sapian Chai there of Thailand on the second leg. Top of the screen, you can see they're just fading a little bit in the second 50, but it's Japan fully in control. Shirai hands over to Aoki. Aoki into the water. Japan leading by a little more than half a length from Singapore. That's Chan on the third leg for the Singapore team. Sri Saad on the third leg for Thailand, top of the screen there. But it's Japan now, just stretching out to a little more than a length. Tamoni Aoki.
Aoki, 23-year-old. Some of these swimmers might be swimming for a place. They might have their top 2 swimmers, and then it's all about the speed that they can put into this heat swim to secure a place in the team that will go to the final, because they would expect to make the final.
Aoki putting in a very powerful last 50. Higashi on the final leg for Japan, really stretching clear now. The race on the second place with Singapore at the moment leading that. Lim on the final leg has got a little more than a length over Zhong Rajang, who's the last leg swimmer for Thailand.
Amanda Lim, the anchor leg swimmer for Singapore. Tremendous serving for Singapore. She's represented her country in so many events, short course and long course. Zigarashi looking very comfortable, nice easy action. Couple of breathing strokes and then head down at the finish. Last 8 strokes there she takes it to the finish. That's good. You don't want to be breathing in the last 3-4 meters at all. Just get to that wall.
Yes, so the challenge really for Japan, less about qualifying for the final and more about individuals trying to stake a claim for one of the 4 berths in the team. But the Japanese easing clear over the course of the last 300 metres. 3:42.47 the winning time. There are just 10 teams entered in this event, so we're only losing 2 into the final later on in the programme.
But again, the problem arises, you want to win the heat, that guarantees you the final. Then you want a good time so that you're in the middle of the pool in the hotbed of racing in tonight's final.
So it'll be an interesting watch over the second heat for Thailand and Macau. China here in lane 4.
Well, some of the young swimmers and spectators getting excited with Indonesia in lane 6.
China quartet here come with a fairly decent curriculum vitae. I think it's inevitable we'll focus on the strength of Japan and China. But the Hong Kong team will be looking for a good qualification here. Are you slightly thrown off course with my use of curriculum vitae?
Absolutely not.
I mean, you're a man of education.
Agricola ad silvam festinat, ab hastis et silvis.
So here we go. Second heat, women's 4x1.
Step down, please. Step down, step down, step down, please.
Again, the Mongolian young swimmer just not sure of the protocol. Starter quite rightly gathering them again.
Take your mark.
Second time of asking, and they're away.
Yes, it certainly wasn't the most even break. Korea moving powerfully there in lane 2, alongside them China. It's Wang on lead off for China. Just in front. Hong Kong, China in second place. Korea now slipping back to third at the first turn.
A lot of swimming to come, of course, as they good, strong swimming, breathing every 2 in the sprint event. Need to get that vital oxygen into the body. Right, doing the job then. Always interesting, the order of swimmers. Sometimes the fastest swimmer goes out first, because in a relay you may have a go at the national record or even the Asian record in the first 100. That would count as a record if it was done. sometimes you put the fastest swimmer at the end because you want to see if you're in challenge for medals, you want to have a strong swimmer at the end to be able to race for a place.
So it's Lau moving into the last 30 metres or so of her leg. She'll hand over to Liu.
This is, sorry Martin, it's just a lovely stroke to watch. Beautiful, even distance of the arms and just easy. She looks like a real talent.
So Liu is away and clear for China. Hong Kong, very strong up that last 50 there. Good leg from Ho. Ho hands on to Tan.
China obviously building their team around some youth and experience with 16 and 17-year-olds getting a chance to swim. And, you know, if they get a chance in the final, it's a much better environment to build on that experience of swimming fast in front of a crowd. Very strong swim from Park. Korea in 3. Kim, my mistake, Park's anchoring.
Yes, so Korea moving strongly, but it's China away and clear. Hong Kong into the water in second place. Korea in third, and you can see over on the far side Maldives actually being lapped.
That's a real shame. But it's the difference between resources and training and full-time work and, you know, obviously small developing nation in the sport.
So Zhu moving into the final 25 metres on the anchor leg here for China. 3:42.47, I guess, the benchmark set by the Japanese quartet in that first heat. This is going to be a good deal quicker than that by a couple of seconds.
Zhu just drifting to the lane divider there. It's unusual when you're swimming in competition. And then just going about at the top of the screen, see the final changeover for Mongolia. And these swimmers who have finished must stay in the water. If they leave the water before Mongolia finish, the team will be disqualified from the relay. The Australians did it in the World Championships one year. Boy, did that ever hit the news.
This is Batabayar and Ahmed Salim. It is on the final leg for Sozan Ashaf, who's actually on the final leg for Maldives.
You probably hear the loudest cheer of the morning when she finishes. There's usually great sympathetic support for a team in this situation.
Yes, I guess who'll never forget the role of Eric Musambani in Sydney. That's almost 20 years ago now, isn't it?
I was there.
So in comes Sozan Ashaf on anchor for Maldives. Well done.
14 the time, no entry time. Could be a national record for all we know.
So not for the first time, the heat's teeing up what should be a cracking head-to-head between Japan and China.
It's the early stages of the swim. This is Lau. I really want to see her in the final. She looks a very good swimmer indeed. Really strong. A little bit stuck there in the change from the dive to the swim. But Zhu completing that 4x100, taking China to the top of the rankings, looking 4 in tonight's finals. Confirming the 340.32, the 345 from the second heat. And those results then get sorted, and you should see the qualifiers for tonight's final. The last event on the programme, but a very exciting one.
Yeah, not too much between the two leading teams, over 400 metres there, just a couple of seconds separating China and Japan. And they go head-to-head tonight, 7 titles to be decided. Promises to be quite a first night in the Aquatic Centre. But what we'll do now is we'll take a look over all the results, the summary of results from the entire session, starting off with that first 1500 metre freestyle. Important to make the point that those times will go towards that second heat at the start of tonight's programme.
Shouldn't trouble the top swimmers, but it could. You can often have a good swim in an earlier heat. It's a timed event.
Yes, and that feature here on in, very much of the head-to-heads between China and Japan. Sun Yang promises to be one of the big names here over the course of the 6 days.
That's going to be one of the best finals of the evening, Martin. Who can drop a couple of seconds?
China dominance in the heats of the women's 200 metre backstroke.
200 backstroke, pretty ordinary, 209s, 211s. Would really want to get down to the 27s and 28s, but I don't see it.
And the 100 metre backstroke.
Yes.
There's the heat summary. China, Japan, just about sums it up. A couple of terrific technicians there.
Yeah. Zhu, Olympic silver medalist against Ria, who was in the final, but much better on the 200. But Ria, the technician, swam 52 point this year, so that could be a factor.
And Japan, well, perhaps the dominant force there in the women's 100 breaststroke.
These are good swims. It's a very good 106.92 from the long experienced Suzuki. But can another couple come down to that 106 point?
Well, Daya Seto and Nayo Horomura, I suppose it's the present and the future of this event.
Seto is a 400 IM man. Horamuro has the event, but these were kg swims on 158s.
And then those freestyle heats that we've just seen, China and Japan. Hong Kong, China, well, they will certainly be eyeing up certainly a bronze medal when we get to that final. Though it was very tight between them and Singapore.
Yeah, it's going to be a real battle for the bronze, I think. China, Japan fight for the gold.
So there we are, that's the end of the first morning session. We can now look forward to the evening. A few thoughts on what you've seen over the course of the last couple of hours, Drew?
Every championship I've been to, it has its rhythm. A number of challenges for the organisers this morning, and it'll get worse in the evening. Hopefully we'll have a slightly better crowd in the evening. Little less noise at the start, flags, etc. But they'll find those things and they'll talk about them and sort them out for tonight's finals, I hope. You're seeing some of the world's best though here at the Asian Games. Like the women's breaststroke, and of course to see Sun Yang, and everybody will want to see what kind of shape he's in. He's hidden away in China for a long period of time. He's popped out, done a 145, but he's the interest. And then the technicians on the backstroke.
And of course these games stand on their own merits as being world-class competition, but I guess the fact we've got an Olympic Games cropping up in Japan in 2 years' time just adds to the interest.
This is the halfway point of the Olympic cycle. If you are not swimming well at this point in things like Pan Pacs or the Asians, you can forget a final in Tokyo. That's what the history books show. You have to win a European, The World Championship
AIS Play ความบันเทิงระดับโลกทุกที่ทุกเวลา
ส่งต่อความมั่นใจ สู้ไปด้วยกันนะครับ